My name is Ronna Sutow. I'm a reporter with the Sentinel newspaper. Tonight I'm here with Mayor William Fox and Peter Dideriksen, Chairman of the Redevelopment Agency. We are here to acquaint you with the agency and its purposes and plans for the redevelopment in the township. Mr. Dideriksen, what is the Redevelopment Agency?
Well, basically it's an agency that's been created to oversee the overall development of a certain segment of East Brunswick.
Mm-hmm. How long has it been in existence now?
Just about a year this month.
Mm-hmm. And what are its duties?
Its duties are to, primary duty is to develop a redevelopment plan for what's been termed as the Golden Triangle, which is the area north of Tices Lane going towards the Turnpike.
Mm-hmm. And who are its members and how were they chosen?
The members are, besides myself, Martin Glass, Marty Basroon, Alan Rubenfeld, Doris Fleming, John Rinaldi, and I believe that's all.
And how were they chosen?
They were appointed. The mayor appoints one, the governor appoints one, and the rest appointed by the township council.
Mm-hmm. What are their qualifications for serving on the agency?
They are business people.
Mm-hmm. Are they being reimbursed by the township?
No, they're not.
They're
all volunteers, yes.
Okay. Mayor Fox, why have a redevelopment agency when there's a planning and zoning board?
Well, the planning and zoning board is a much more passive kind of activity. The responsibilities of the planning board particularly is to receive applications from developers of land and then examine those applications to see that the public health, safety, and welfare is properly safeguarded. And the zoning board has a similar responsibility with some other duties related to the zoning ordinances. But that's a very passive kind of activity waiting for applications to come. The redevelopment agency has the power and authority to be a much more active agency, to go out and seek developers for a particular area, to encourage developers to develop plans and projects for particular parts of or particular pieces of land, and at the same time to do its, in a sense, its own planning. The redevelopment agency now is seeking planning assistance in developing an integrated plan for the Golden Triangle area. So they're very different functions, one being passive and the other one being a much more activist function.
Mr. Dideriksen, where does the agency get its funding?
So far the agency has had seed money funded by federal grants, and that is the case this year as well. Hopefully in the near future, when the first projects get off the ground, they'll be self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm. Mayor, why is the Golden Triangle the first area to be targeted?
Well, it's I think there are a combination of reasons. First of all, there's Route 18 in general, which many people in the community want to see improved even beyond what's happened there in the past few years. Secondly, the area of Route 18 north of Tices Lane is the oldest area of Route 18. It was the stores there were largely built in the late 50s, some in the early 60s, but they've been there for 20 or more years. There's been a minimum of refurbishing of those facilities. Certainly the very point of the triangle, Kaufman Carpets and those stores is an exception, but by and large it's been there for a long time, and there hasn't been a great deal of activity in refurbishing it, and it represents, I think, one of the more valuable assets of the township in terms of the potential for future development to add to our rateable base to reduce the tax burden on the residential taxpayer.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Dideriksen, what sort of plans does the agency have for that area? Are they thinking office buildings, shopping malls?
At this point, we have just made arrangements for a planner to take an active part in studying the area, and we have a time schedule of Labor Day to see some plans of what should be developed in that area.
Well, do the members of the agency have some sort of idea in the back of their minds what they'd like to see in that area?
Yeah, I think basically the Economic Health Master Plan is the basis for what the Redevelopment Agency is going to do in terms of developing that area, and it deals with a multitude of uses, including office and retail.
What is that Economic Health Master Plan, Mayor?
Well, in about 1976 or 77, I and the then Township Council, along with the staff, decided that there was a need for some longer-range economic planning for the township. One of the things that has happened to developing communities in the past has been that they've developed without the proper mix of residential and industrial commercial, and they found themselves with increasing costs and no non-residential ratables or an insufficient amount of non-residential ratables to assist in paying for those things. So we saw the need to be much more aggressive and active in planning our economic future and determining what our strengths and weaknesses were, and attempting to attract a better mix of ratables. The second part of the reasons for doing economic planning was that I'm personally convinced that the older areas around us, New Brunswick, Perth Amboy, and others, although we're quite different demographically and quite different in terms of our development, that part of the decline of those communities has been the result of a lack of planning for the future. And it seemed to me that we needed to take preventative steps to see that, for example, the areas north of Tice's Land on Route 18 did not turn into abandoned stores and a blight on the community. So those two things led us to initiate the economic planning activity as a replacement for a kind of industrial development commission that had been in existence before. And at that time we appointed a number of residents to the commission, people who were officers in medium to large corporations, people who were small business people in the community, people who were ordinary citizens. And over about a 3-year period, they, with assistance from the planning staff, studied our strengths, looked at our weaknesses, examined the competition for ratables around us, and out of that came the Economic Health Amendment to the Comprehensive Master Plan, which talked both in terms of future development and the maintenance of the existing ratables that we had and what the township needed to be doing to support those and keep them viable so that we could avoid the future decline of our ratable base.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Dideriksen, the international market, I believe, has a long-term lease. How is the agency going to work with that area?
Well, that side of the highways is the original half of the Golden Triangle, and will in some form be part of any redevelopment plan out of necessity. It comprises a fairly large, substantial part of the total acreage.
Mm-hmm. But I believe they still have about 20 years left on, or 25 years left on their lease?
That's correct.
What's going to...
At this point, we do not know what's going to happen. It's
Mm-hmm.
too early to tell, yeah.
Okay. Is a redevelopment agency, Mayor, really needed to accomplish what has to be done in that area?
Well, I think it is. After we, some of the zoning changes that went along with economic health planning were done very early, so that by the time the redevelopment agency was formed, we had had some zoning in place for 7 years that we thought would be an incentive to the private sector to redevelop areas of Route 18. That is, if you make the zoning attractive enough by permitting high-value uses, and economically viable uses, then theoretically the private sector investors will see that, and you don't have to have any government involvement. But after 7 years, when essentially nothing had happened, I and others decided that it was time to recommend to the Township Council that it go ahead and create the redevelopment agency, which was one of the options outlined in the Economic Health Amendment to the Master Plan. And so they did that. And I think that, you know, there's a little bit of a dilemma here. I know that there are people who say, well, we think that that government has too much power anyway, and that government shouldn't be, pardon me, shouldn't be involved in areas such as this. But it's also clear to me that unless we're willing to wait an indeterminate period, that the involvement of government as a stimulus to private sector investment is necessary. And we can look at examples around us. I think that the city of New Brunswick is a classic example of this. If anybody believes that New Brunswick would have redeveloped in the way that it has, without a New Brunswick Tomorrow, without a DevCo, which were government, quasi-government organizations created to develop partnerships with the private sector in redevelopment, you know, they're just barking up a tree, because New Brunswick simply would not have redeveloped if those agencies had not been in place. Again, there's not a direct parallel between us and New Brunswick, because they had a whole different set of problems, which fortunately we don't have. But I think that the example of the creation of partnerships between government and the private sector is an example that has worked in other parts of the country, and an example that will work for us for the ultimate benefit of the township, not only economically, but aesthetically, in terms of the appearance of the highway. And that is, after all, the gateway to our community.
Mr. Dideriksen, what sort of time frame are we looking at for the total redevelopment?
Well, at this point, the planners have been charged to come back with a finished plan by Labor Day, and that's probably a little ambitious, so maybe 60 days beyond that. However, the planning activity in itself will take place over the coming months, and with plenty of input from not only the businesses along the affected areas, but from the Township Council and Planning Board as well, to make sure that everybody is well attuned to what we have in mind.
And how long do you think the actual tearing down and building? Are you talking 5 years,
No,
10 years?
I'd not venture to guess, but I think it all depends how much of the private sector we can get involved very early. The building of the Tower Center has created a great deal of stimulus for Route 18, and that will probably work in our favor. We're seeing a great deal of interest already now. It'll be a matter of pulling those interests together so that we develop it the way we want it, rather than individual developers.
Mm-hmm. How will this redevelopment affect the traffic on Route 18?
The township is already, maybe the mayor will address that separately, but is already doing a traffic analysis, and part of our planning is also looking at traffic analysis. However, the two planners will be getting together, so we'll avoid any kind of duplication of effort, but it's foremost in our minds what effect it'll have, and it'll no doubt have some effect, not only on 18, but surrounding roads as well.
Mayor?
Well, I think Pierre has answered the question. There's no question that development in East Brunswick along 18 will have some impact on the highway. But I think when you compare it to the development of 10,000 residential units by Olympia and York further south on Route 18 in Old Bridge, or even the development that's taking place there now, it's an inconsequential contribution to whatever traffic problems they are. And it seems to me that it doesn't make any sense at all for East Brunswick to slow down or to hurt its non-residential rateable growth in order to permit a developer to build 10,000 residential units on the other end of the highway. So that I think that what we have to do is is be sure that the arrangements and the plan that we come up with and support, the agency comes up with and supports, has the least impact on traffic that we can possibly have. But at the same time, I think it's rather clear that the state of New Jersey Department of Transportation is going to have to make substantial investments in Route 18 in East Brunswick to improve the traffic flow, simply because we're in the middle of rather massive development to our south and to our north.
How will this redevelopment affect the municipal tax rate, either one of you?
I hope the as the development plans move forward, it'll have a positive impact and help lower the burden on the residential tax burden. I'd like to get back to the road problem for a second, in that the economic health amendment to the master plan is one of the things it did identify was that the proper mix of uses in lessening the impact on the highway is something that we'll be looking very carefully at as well. And that's one of the dangers of not having implemented a plan, in that it can develop as is today.
Mr. Dideriksen, what steps are necessary to start the redevelopment process?
Nothing can start without a redevelopment plan.
Okay, I mean beyond the plan.
Beyond the plan.
Once the plan has been approved.
Once the plan has been approved, private forces, hopefully private forces will be plentiful enough that we can work with private developers, and then it really becomes a matter of finding a developer who has the necessary skills and resources to implement the plan.
Well, Mayor, can that area be considered called a blighted area in order to get the redevelopment process started?
Well, it could be. The term blight, which is a term used in the state statute, I think is an unfortunate term, because it doesn't really mean what you would find if you looked it up in the dictionary in the legal sense. The blight statute can be invoked for many reasons, including dilapidation, including patterns of ownership. For example, if there's a large parcel that's underutilized, and it's underutilized because there are many owners and it would be difficult to package that together, that's a reason for declaring blight. It's in fact one of the most powerful statutes that I've run across in terms of the powers it gives to municipal government. As Pierre indicated, it would be our hope that the redevelopment process would start because there was an attractive plan and private investors felt that it was worth their while to acquire the properties necessary to do the redevelopment. If that did not happen, then I think, and if there is a desire on the part of the community to see the upgrading of Route 18 and the improvement of the properties along Route 18, then with resolution of the council and action by the planning board and lots of public involvement and hearings, there is the possibility of invoking the blight statute in order to acquire the land to start the redevelopment process.
If this has to be invoked, Mr. Dideriksen, once that area is, or business is determined to be blighted, how will that affect the property owners?
It can affect them in a number of ways. One of the possible ways is that any property owner, should the area develop in a commercial manner, could become part of the new development, which would be, of course, very desirable. They would get the benefit of more modern facilities and better traffic patterns and so forth. If, however, that was not the case, they might have to relocate, and for that purpose there's state statutes that deals with relocation.
What avenues of appeal are open to anybody whose business may be declared blighted?
Well, it's not a question of declaring somebody's business blighted. It's a question of declaring the property blighted. I might emphasize that doesn't mean that anybody's property gets taken. There are provisions for compensation for the property and relocation costs and other things. But the declaration of blight gives the township the power of eminent domain over that property. And then there's an appraisal process, a negotiation process. If the property owner feels that the blight determination is improper, they have the right to appeal to the courts. And in the one case where we've exercised the blight statute, we were something like 15 times to the Supreme Court on that one case. If they don't object at that point, but they feel the condemnation price is not fair and they've been unable to come to agreement with the township, then that can be appealed to condemnation commissioners who make a determination of price after hearing, and if that fails, or if they fail to be satisfied there, there's further appeal in the courts. So that most of the appeal rights are legal through the court system, but there's a lot of law about that, and the path is well known.
Mr. Dideriksen, what happens to those who are renting on a piece of property that is declared blighted?
Well, I'll repeat what I said earlier. Hopefully we can find, if should that happen, find a new place of business for them. And chances are that if they are in a standard type of business, that should be possible, but primarily a retail. I'd like to just to emphasize what the mayor said, that while the appeal process is going on, nothing can happen. So for all practical purposes, even if blight has been declared, nothing can be done till the appeal process is over.
Well, what forms of relocation assistance are available?
Depends if it's an individual or a business. If it's a business, it can vary from the property owner actually has a choice. Can elect to get expenses for moving, such as warehousing and moving expenses, which is spelled out in the statute, or elect to receive the average of 2 years net profit not to exceed $10,000, which is also in the statute.
I might hasten to add that the objection to this comes up because it's government involved. If the landlord, the owner of the building that someone's renting in and has a retail business, decided to sell the building or decided not to renew the lease, depending on the terms of the lease, the tenant has no rights. And this question of appeal and caring for tenants only enters in because it's government involved. And I think that's probably proper. The thing that was quite surprising to me when we had the initial blight hearings on the area opposite the Golden Triangle was that all the property owners lived out of town. Almost all the tenants were East Brunswick residents, and that was quite a surprise. And I think that at that point the agency and the planning board and the township council and I all realized that we needed to look more carefully at tenant relocation benefits and what happened to the businesses that were tenants of these buildings. But from the other side of it, it was clear that the landlords had been living out of town for a long time, and to the extent to which they had received the rents but not reinvested in their buildings, I'm not sure that having that money flow out of the community is a very good thing.
Mr. Dideriksen, will those businessmen who leave the area, whether they're owners or renters, while it's being redeveloped, get preferential treatment once they get into once the redevelopment is finished? Not
necessarily. It depends to some extent what arrangements they can make with the new developers, and from what we've talked to people so far, that seems to be the overall desire to make arrangements for everyone, whether they be tenants or small landowners or property owners. I think it's an important point, and Bill is correct, that we learned an awful lot from that initial blight hearing. And the brochure that the agency has developed, one of the reasons for that is specifically to make sure that the property owners and or tenants are appraised of what's going on as it progresses, so that they don't get any surprises, and we certainly learned from that a lot.
Mayor, what about redevelopment in the other areas of the township?
Well, I think we want to move slowly. The agency is limited to Route 18. The people have come up with various candidates. There's some of the people in the historic district had indicated some complaint that Main Street was not part of the redevelopment agency's charter, and there are a few other areas that we can think of. I think that it's important that we gain experience with the agency and walk, maybe crawl before we walk and run and so on. But if it works and if there's confidence in the agency, in the community, then I could see you know, a great deal of activity at some point in the future. And we're talking now in terms of years, not months.
Mr. Dideriksen, concern was voiced about other areas of 18. I believe other businessmen, especially south of Rouge, are also seeking some sort of redevelopment assistance. What are the plans for that area?
Well, basically the Economic Health Master Plan spells out some of the drawbacks of the area of shallow properties with limited parking and lots of curb cuts, and at this point we have not addressed that at all. But I think no matter what we do and no matter what happened at Tower Center site, it'll have an impact on the rest of Route 18 and other parts of the township, and eventually we'll have to look at that.
Do you foresee that the redevelopment agency literally working its way south on 18?
I think the redevelopment agency eventually will be dealing with the entire township, wherever there's property in need of development.
Okay. And thank you, Mr. Dideriksen and Mayor Fox. And thank you for tuning in to the Channel 8 special on the Redevelopment Agency. For more information, this pamphlet is available either at the library or by contacting Marilyn Stamberg in the Township Office of Planning and Community Development. Her telephone number is 390-6873. For Channel 8, I am Ronna Sutow.